Hello, everyone. My name is Zainab, and this is the story of the first night of my marriage, the night that completely changed the way I understood love. I grew up in a quiet little town, surrounded by dusty roads, small houses, and people who all knew each other. My family was simple. We did not have much money, but our home was always full of warmth. I lived with my parents, my older brother Hamza, my younger brother Sami, and my little sister Noor. We shared everything: meals, laughter, worries, and dreams. My father worked long hours in a furniture workshop, and every evening he came home exhausted. Yet he still smiled when he saw us waiting for him at the dinner table. My mother was the heart of our house. She was gentle but strong, and she always told me that a woman's beauty was not only in her face, but in her patience, dignity, and kindness. As a young girl, I dreamed about marriage the way many girls do. I watched romantic dramas secretly with my cousins and imagined that one day I would meet a man who would understand me completely. I dreamed of a husband who would protect me, laugh with me, and make me feel safe. But dreams are always easier than reality. As I grew older, I began hearing stories from married women around me. Some stories were sweet, while others were painful. I especially feared hearing women whisper about the first night of marriage. Some described it with embarrassment, others with fear, and a few with happiness. Those stories stayed in my mind for years. Then one day, shortly after my 22nd birthday, my parents told me that a respectable family had come to ask for my hand in marriage. The man's name was Kareem. I had seen him only once before at a family gathering. He seemed calm and polite, but I knew almost nothing about him. In our culture, marriage is not simply about two people falling in love overnight. It is about families joining together, trust being built slowly, and two strangers learning how to become partners for life. When my parents asked me if I agreed to the marriage, my heart trembled. I was excited, nervous, hopeful, and terrified all at once. Part of me imagined happiness, while another part feared stepping into a completely unknown life. Still, after praying and thinking deeply, I said yes. The weeks before the wedding passed quickly. Every day was filled with preparations. My mother and aunts discussed dresses, jewelry, food, and decorations from morning until night. Neighbors visited constantly, bringing advice and blessings. My little sister Noor followed me everywhere, asking endless questions about married life, even though she was too young to understand any of it. Sometimes I laughed with everyone, but when I was alone in my room at night, fear quietly returned to my heart. The wedding day finally arrived. From early morning, our house became alive with noise and excitement. Women sang traditional songs while helping me dress. The smell of perfume and fresh flowers filled every room. My bridal dress was deep crimson with gold embroidery covering the sleeves and skirt. My hands were decorated with dark henna patterns that stretched to my wrists, and heavy golden bracelets rested against my skin. Layers of makeup hid my nervous face, but they could not calm my shaking heart. When I looked into the mirror, I barely recognized myself. Outside, I looked like a beautiful bride, ready for a perfect future. Inside, I still felt like the shy girl who used to sit beside her mother in the kitchen, listening to stories. Guests filled the wedding hall by evening. Lights sparkled from every corner. Music echoed through the room, and relatives surrounded me with smiles and blessings. Yet even while everyone celebrated, one question kept repeating in my mind. What will happen tonight? I had heard so many stories that my thoughts became tangled with fear. Some women said the first night was painful. Others said husbands could be impatient or cold. A few described it as magical and unforgettable. I did not know which stories were true, and that uncertainty frightened me more than anything else. Eventually, the marriage ceremony was completed. Kareem and I signed the documents while our families watched proudly. My father's eyes became wet with tears as he kissed my forehead. His voice trembled slightly when he whispered, "Be patient, my daughter. Build your new home with kindness and respect." Hearing those words almost broke me. I suddenly realized that my childhood was ending. When it was finally time to leave, I hugged my mother tightly. She held me so close that I could feel her tears against my cheek. I tried to stay strong, but the moment I walked toward the car, tears slipped from my eyes. The drive to Kareem's family home felt unreal. I stared through the window at the dark streets, while my heart beat harder with every passing minute. When we arrived, his family welcomed me warmly. His mother embraced me lovingly, and his sisters smiled kindly as they led me inside. The house was decorated beautifully with flowers, lights, and candles. Everyone treated me gently, yet my nervousness refused to disappear. Even while relatives laughed and talked around me, my thoughts remained fixed on the night ahead. After several hours, the guests slowly began leaving. Kareem's sisters teased me playfully before guiding me toward the bedroom prepared for us. "Now we leave you with your prince," one of them joked, making the others laugh. I smiled nervously, unable to answer. The room was breathtaking. Soft candlelight danced across the walls, rose petals covered the bed, and the scent of jasmine perfume floated through the air. It looked like a scene from one of the romantic dramas I used to watch. But instead of excitement, I felt my chest tightening with fear. I sat quietly at the edge of the bed, my hands trembling in my lap. The silence in the room felt heavy. Every second seemed longer than the one before it. Then I heard the door open behind me. My entire body became tense immediately. I lowered my eyes and held my breath. Kareem entered quietly and closed the door softly. For a few moments, neither of us spoke. I could hear only my own heartbeat pounding loudly in my ears. He walked toward me slowly and sat beside me, leaving a respectful distance between us. The silence continued for another moment before he finally spoke. "Zainab," he said gently, "I know tonight is difficult for you." His voice surprised me. It was calm, warm, and slightly nervous. "You do not have to be afraid of me," he continued softly. "I promise I will never force you into anything." I slowly lifted my eyes and looked at him properly for the first time that day. He was smiling shyly, almost awkwardly, as though he was just as nervous as I was. That expression immediately softened something inside me. He poured a glass of water and handed it to me carefully. Our fingers brushed for only a second, but my cheeks grew warm instantly. He noticed my embarrassment and laughed quietly. "You know," he said with a playful smile, "I'm nervous too." I blinked in surprise. "You are?" "Of course," he admitted. "I've never been married before either." For the first time that entire day, I laughed softly. That small moment changed everything. Instead of rushing or pressuring me, Kareem began talking casually. He told me stories about his childhood, his strict teachers, and the embarrassing mistakes he made as a teenager. He even admitted how terrified he had felt while walking toward the room. Listening to him slowly eased the fear trapped inside my chest. He no longer felt like a stranger. He felt human. After a while, he looked at me carefully and asked, "Can I hold your hand?" I hesitated briefly before nodding. He took my hand gently, as though it were something delicate. His hands were warm and steady, and the simple gesture filled me with unexpected comfort. Then he spoke words I would never forget. "Tonight is not about pressure," he whispered. "It's about trust. We have our whole lives ahead of us." Tears suddenly filled my eyes. For weeks I had imagined frightening possibilities. But this man sitting beside me cared more about my comfort than his own desires. He noticed my tears immediately and gently wiped them away with his thumb. "Please don't cry," he said softly. "I want you to feel safe with me." At that moment, something inside me changed completely. My fear began melting away, little by little. He leaned closer and kissed my forehead tenderly. It was not a demanding or selfish kiss. It felt full of care and reassurance. Then we simply talked for hours. We spoke about our childhood memories, our dreams, our favorite foods, and even silly things that made us laugh. The room no longer felt frightening. Slowly, it became warm and peaceful. Later that night, when he kissed me gently for the first time, I did not turn away, not because I felt pressured, but because I trusted him. Everything between us was slow, respectful, and filled with patience. That was the moment I understood that intimacy is not only physical. True intimacy is feeling emotionally safe with someone. The next morning, sunlight entered softly through the curtains. I woke slowly and realized Kareem's arm was still around me protectively. For a moment, I simply lay there, listening to his calm breathing. My heart felt peaceful in a way I had never experienced before. Quietly, I stood and looked at myself in the mirror. My hair was messy, my makeup had disappeared, and I looked exhausted. Yet somehow, I also looked different, older, stronger, like someone standing at the beginning of a completely new life. Behind me, I heard Kareem's sleepy voice. "Where are you going so early, Mrs. Zainab?" I turned quickly, blushing. He smiled lazily and stretched his arms. "Come back," he said teasingly. "Don't abandon me already." I laughed softly and sat beside him again. He reached for my hand, kissed it gently, and whispered, "Thank you for trusting me." Those simple words touched my heart deeply. The first weeks of marriage were filled with visitors, celebrations, and endless cups of tea. Relatives constantly asked how married life was treating me. I never knew how to explain it properly. How could I describe the comfort of small gestures? The way Kareem quietly carried heavy trays for me when I looked tired. The way he held my hand under the table when I felt nervous around guests. The way he listened carefully every time I spoke, even about unimportant things. One evening, about a week after our wedding, we sat together on the balcony beneath a sky full of stars. Cool air carried the scent of jasmine flowers through the garden. Kareem looked at me quietly before asking, "Do you still feel afraid around me?" I thought carefully before answering. "No," I admitted softly. "Not anymore." His eyes warmed with relief. "Good," he whispered, "because I want our home to always feel safe for you." As weeks turned into months, our marriage continued growing stronger. Of course, not every day was perfect. Sometimes we misunderstood each other. Sometimes I became overwhelmed with household responsibilities and missed my family terribly. On difficult nights, I cried quietly into my pillow, pretending everything was fine. But Kareem always noticed. One night, after I had secretly cried for hours missing my mother, he gently lifted my chin and asked, "Why are your eyes red?" "I'm fine," I lied quickly. He shook his head softly. "Zainab, don't hide your sadness from me. I am your husband. If something hurts you, let me share the pain." Hearing those words made me cry even harder. He simply held me quietly until I calmed down. That moment taught me another important truth about marriage. Real love is not about pretending to be perfect. It is about feeling safe enough to be vulnerable. Months later, while we were talking one evening, I finally confessed something that had stayed hidden in my heart for a long time. Before our wedding, I admitted quietly, "I was terrified of you." Kareem looked genuinely shocked. "Terrified?" I nodded slowly. "I thought you might hurt me or ignore my feelings." He became silent for a moment before replying firmly, "A man who forces his wife is not truly a man. Love without respect is not love at all." His words settled deeply into my heart. At that moment, I realized something powerful. I had not fallen in love with him simply because he was my husband. I had fallen in love with the way he treated me, with patience, tenderness, and respect. Years may pass, but I will never forget that first night. Not because it was dramatic or perfect, but because it taught me what true love should feel like. Love should never begin with fear. It should begin with kindness, with patience, with trust. Today, when I sit quietly beside my husband under the evening sky, I sometimes remember the terrified girl I once was. The girl sitting nervously on the edge of a flower-covered bed, afraid of the unknown. I wish I could hug that girl and whisper to her, "You are safe, you are loved, and everything will be okay." To every woman listening to my story, remember this: your heart deserves gentleness, respect, and care. And to every man listening, remember that strength is not shown through control or force. True strength is shown through patience, understanding, and kindness. Because in the end, love is not about power. It is about making another soul feel safe in your hands. And that is the most beautiful feeling in the world.